broadcasting live from Memphis, the hardwood and cotton capital of the world. Brenden Martin, our excellent, brilliant double knot spy producer, is down in Ocala, Florida, the limestone capital, Marion County, Florida, horse capital of the world. And he'll show you the graphic to prove it. I mean, it is somewhere. That the World Equestrian Center, they didn't invest over $2 billion into that thing because they don't have good horses. There it is. All right. Hey, we have got a great show. Chris Lee. This guy, if you're not following him, follow him. The Southeastern 14. Yeah. He's part of SEC Sidelines Sports Network and SECU. We're going to cover the SEC top to bottom because there's a lot to talk about. Yancy Porter, Rebel Yell Hotline, checks in the next segment. And then Rodney Orr, Tighter Insider. A lot to talk about. Get pen and paper handy. Before you do it, smash the subscribe button for YouTube down in the bottom right-hand corner. And Brenden, I was talking to Dr. Waller May.
And like us on Facebook and follow if you're watching that way. We're simulcasting there too as well. And don't forget to turn on your notifications for your apps and your phones and all that stuff. And we don't want to talk too much about it because we got guests, so we'll be right back.
Yeah, so let's go.
Open the show.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, man. Chris Lee is in the studio with us right now at the Southeastern 14 up in Nashville. And Chris, I was talking, and doing a lot on YouTube and Facebook all over. I was talking to one of our sponsors, a longtime listener, Dr. Waller May, down in Tuscaloosa. And he said, man, I love it. I get these notifications for your show, Southeastern 14, and other shows on YouTube. They just pop up, and bam, you just tap on it, and it's real easy. I got a chance, and I do this with our guests. I love to watch what y'all are producing. Double thumbs up on what you're doing. And you've got a great panel. You get into serious topics. Some of them are short, some of them are longer. But you're on here to talk about the SEC in this basketball race, top to bottom, the conference. I can't remember it being this exciting, and the possibility of 5 teams, if some crazy things happen, 5 teams could tie for the SEC men's basketball championship.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for the kind words. Second of all, yes, welcome to the SEC. Welcome to college basketball. There are no givens this year. The closest thing to a given we have in this league is Tennessee, which whether it wins the conference outright or not, looks like the best team to me. I think that last week it probably resolved that question with a double exclamation point with what it did to Auburn and Knoxville and then did to Alabama and Tuscaloosa, where nobody other than Clemson had won. But, yeah, you've got some other good teams outside of those. You talked about the 5 teams that could tie for the title. You've got Mississippi State's quality team, and you've even got some NIT type teams like LSU that can beat teams on a given night, as Kentucky found out. It's a good league. I cannot wait for the tournament in our backyard next week.
Yeah, and I was telling our panels the last couple of shows that every time Kentucky wins, you can just hear the cha-ching, ching, ching of the hotel rooms in Nashville going up. What's the availability, what you're hearing, of hotel rooms? Nashville's built for big events, but is anything bigger that they host than the SEC basketball tournament?
There's no availability up there for hotels right now. Are you kidding me? There's no availability in general because you just can't go there because it's a fun place to hang out. I mean, I know they do a pretty good job accommodating, but I got to think everything is pretty bad.
Yeah, Brenden. I mean, Chris, what do we got up there? Any rooms?
You're asking the wrong guy. I live in the suburbs here. I don't have to deal with it.
Yeah. Yeah, you're smart. I mean, but it's going to be an awesome event. We know Kentucky fans are going to pour in there, but before we get there, we still got 2 more games for everybody to play. Big one tonight. Alabama goes down to the O-Dome to play Florida. What do you think will happen?
When in doubt, take the home team. That's been my attitude for a while. I think they're very similar teams. I think that, well, in fact, we previewed this yesterday. We unpacked it for 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah.
I think Alabama's a better offensive team. Florida's a better rebounding team. I think that's wherever you put your emphasis on what you value more in this game. But, I mean, they're both – neither of are great rebounding teams. Florida's a really good offensive rebounding team. Defensive end, they're kind of shakier. Alabama's really shaky on the defensive glass. And I think that's indicative of 2 teams that like to get out and play fast-paced ball and maybe get buckets on the other floor is probably what that is. But, I mean, it's A, it's who do you trust to make shots more, and B, well, what do you make a home court advantage? I mean, it's carried the day so far, but not always, as Tennessee proved. When in doubt, I go with the home team. I'll go with Florida, but I could see Alabama just being better at getting buckets than Florida, because it's better at doing that than probably anybody in the country.
Yeah, Dave Tompkins was on the show with us Friday talking basketball, and he knows Alabama pretty well, and he said, they're a really good system team. That's the way Nate Oates coaches. But if you get into a game against a coach and a team that can slow it down and change everything, that's where Alabama struggles. Let's talk about that matchup, Todd Golden's way, Nate Oates' way.
Well, they're both really good. Nate Oates is on the radar for bigger things maybe this offseason, depending on what you consider bigger things. That name's going to be out there. I don't know if he's leaving Alabama. Todd Golden, certainly an up-and-comer who came from San Francisco, and I think this is probably a water has found its own level situation. I mean, I'm not saying Todd Golden couldn't get a different job one day, but Florida's a pretty good one. I mean, you won a couple national titles there not long ago. That's a lot of talking to work around your question. Again, I don't really know. A lot of it's just who makes shots on a given night, and they both got play. I'll tell you what I am watching, the guard play. I think that Zion Pullen and Mark Sears are probably the best 2-point guards in the league, and anytime you get a matchup like that, I think it's fascinating. And they've got – both of them have got plenty of other guys who can score too. I mean, both these teams are – 7-8 deep with guys that could give you 15 on any night, and that's just a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah. Tennessee's got to play at South Carolina. We know what happened, 63-59 South Carolina, won in Knoxville. In that game, Dalton Connect, 31 points. The rest of Tennessee, 28. Last Saturday, we all watched Tennessee go to Coleman Coliseum in Tuscaloosa. Dalton Connect had about half his normal average.
Yeah.
And Tennessee won, 81-74. That was a big, big win. What did they do to Alabama that most people can't do? Because, other than it looked to me like they slowed them down, which they did, because Alabama's been scoring 95 and 100-plus in a lot of games.
I was listening to Ron Slay talk about this, and he said, I'm sitting there. This is the matchup in Knoxville. He said, I'm watching the teams come out. And Tennessee's got all these big or beefy guys. They're not as tall, but they all look like they're, 6'8" outside linebackers and tight ends. And then you've got Alabama, which has got some size with Grant Nelson, but they're just a lot skinnier. I just think that Tennessee is so physical. Yeah, they're just hard to contend with. And it's like what South Carolina did to Tennessee. Sometimes you run into a style that just – it's hard for you to manage for whatever reason. But flipping it back to Tennessee for a minute, this team won 2 games last week against top 20 teams in very different styles. You got winning in Thompson Bowling with everybody in the building knowing the ball was going to Dalton Connect and Auburn, which is the best field goal percentage defense team in the country, couldn't stop him. And then you go down to Alabama. He gets in foul trouble. and you win it with other guys. I just think that points to how complete a team Tennessee is, and I think that's why. And I know all the stuff is out there. Rick Barnes can't get a team to the Final Four. He did it once at Texas with Kevin Durant, but other than that, his teams have not gone as far in the postseason is where they ended the regular season ranked on a lot of occasions. And everybody knows that's out there. But I just look at the way they're constructed and the way they get business done in different ways. And I think this might be the year that it ends differently.
Yeah, Dalton Connect, he's averaging about 26 points a game. He's the first time ever Tennessee's had a player be named SEC Player of the Week 4 times.
Wow.
And he's really an impressive player. I mean, he can go from the top, slam it. He can shoot the lights out of the ball. But they got to go to South Carolina. South Carolina was on fire. Got drilled at Auburn, then lost at home by a point to LSU. And I think people said the narrative was they've been exposed. But that's just not Lamont Paris. That's not what they are. They've hunkered down. They're doubling down. They got this home environment at Colonial Center. What do you think Tennessee's going to do in that game? That Tennessee needs to at least split these last 2 to win the SEC.
Well, let's go to Carolina a minute. Carolina lost those 2 games in just soul-crushing fashion. The Auburn beat Carolina by 40. Carolina follows it up by coming home in a game that it was favored in and loses to LSU in a 1-point game. That's a really tough combo to take because you just get smashed 2 different ways.
Yeah.
And since then, they've gotten it back together, and I credit coaching. But as to this game, I think stylistically, there aren't a lot of guards that have played more college basketball than Meechie Johnson and Talon Cooper. Cooper takes care of the ball, doesn't turn it over. Johnson is kind of their bucket getter. Colin Murray-Boyles has been really good for them. Missed a lot of the first part of the season with mono when he's healthy. I think it was mono. I can't remember. There was an injury or illness there, and if I got it wrong, I apologize. But he missed a lot of time. When he's healthy and full go, they're a better team. Miles Studi's missed some time for them. He's kind of that 3-point shooter that's hard to contend with because he's taller. When they've got all their parts there and they're healthy, the computers are still saying, hey, this is barely an at-large caliber team, the Ken Palms and those kind of things. But I think a lot of that was built up in the non-conference portion of the season. If you watch them play and see what they do, I just think that experience at guard has made such a difference. Now, can they do it to Tennessee again? I don't know. The computers say there's a pretty big difference in skill level in those teams, and we'll wait and see. But they've done it once, and so we'll see what both teams learn from that.
Well, South Carolina and that large team, and that was maybe early on, but they're in the hunt to win the whole SEC, and I think in a 4 seed or 5 seed probably something like that. But again, they still got 2 games to play plus what they do in the tournament, so they've got a lot of upside potential.
Yeah, and let me rephrase what I'm saying. South Carolina's 44 in Ken Palm today.
Okay.
So that's what, and I think Bart Torvik is very similar. I'm not saying there are 43 teams better than South Carolina. I think you've got to take the whole body of evidence, and there's 29 games of evidence. Carolina's won 24 of them, although to be fair, the non-conference strength of schedule was lacking in a lot of ways. But that's where a lot of the doubt comes from, is the predictives, which a lot of times teams play down to those at this point of the season. You can see Ole Miss. Computers were saying, hey, while AP's got them ranked in the top 25, they're a top 60-ish type team, top 70-ish type team, and that caught up. But sometimes it doesn't, and it appears it's not caught up with Carolina. And again, I do attribute some of that to not having Colin Murray-Boyles earlier in the year.
Yeah. All right, looking at other matchups in this league, Auburn's got to go play at Missouri. That's going to be tonight at 9 Eastern. They should get that win. Auburn right now, and then they got Georgia at home at like 5:30 Saturday at Neville Arena. Auburn's a team, they finish out 13-5. If some crazy things happen, yeah, they could win it, but they're really trying to play to avoid playing on the first day of the SEC tournament. Looking at another team that Mississippi State, And it's a pretty good team. Their two lowest scoring first halves have been both against Auburn at the Hump and then at Neville Arena. Auburn got the better of them in the second matchup. They didn't win that first one. Who are some of the teams that are really in desperate need of a great close to get into the tournament? Because we're thinking we could have 8, maybe 9 SEC teams get bids this year, which would be one of the best years in conference history.
Well, look, let's start from the top. Tennessee, Kentucky, Auburn, Alabama, South Carolina, locks. Mississippi State, I would put right there too. Who am I missing here?
Maybe Ole Miss has got a lot of work to do.
Ole Miss has got
LSU,
a lot of work to do. LSU's got to win the tournament. And let's see, Texas A&M's got a lot of work to do, but I'm missing a team. Alabama, Auburn, Florida, Kentucky, Mississippi State, South Carolina, Tennessee, all those teams are locks or near locks. So it's really, at this point, it is South Carolina and A&M seem to be on the outside looking in. Ole Miss got a lot of work to do. I don't know if I said Ole Miss and A&M are the two teams on the outside looking in. Ole Miss has probably got more work to do because the non-conference body of work isn't strong. The big wins aren't there. A&M's got some big wins, but it's also got a lot of head-scratching losses. And I think usually, if you're betting on one team, it's going to be A&M because of the big wins and the predictive computers. The Ken Palms like them better, BPI. So, I mean, I think A&M's at least got something to work with. Ole Miss has got a lot to do, and it's probably going to have to be beating, not only not stumbling throughout the last 2 games of the regular season, but also probably winning a couple of games against an Alabama, Tennessee, somebody like that in Nashville to make a dent.
Yeah. So Florida, this game tonight at the O-Dome is huge for the Gators. And in terms of where they go in the tournament, because they went through a stretch where they won 7 of 8, lost at South Carolina Saturday. At Alabama, this matchup tonight, actually that game is going to be one of the better games on the schedule anywhere in the country because Alabama's worst losses have come obviously at Tennessee, at Auburn, and at Kentucky. I mean, again, when they're on, they're hard to beat. But when they're off, it's a mess. But they play one really good style. And so top to bottom conference to me, I think it's made us better. Outside the SEC, Big East or Big 12 as number 1?
Big 12.
Yeah.
I mean, you got Baylor, Iowa State, Kansas. I think that to me, the Big East, I mean, you've got Creighton's there. Obviously, UConn is arguably the best team in the country, but I just think that and the Big East has got a lot of bubblish teams, Providence, Seton Hall, those kind of teams. But I think you look at the top, Houston also in there, of course. I just think that the Big 12's got more big boys that are top 4 seed in the NCAA tournament type teams than does the Big East.
The more Kansas loses, the higher they go in the rankings. It's just, I mean, it's almost, they just dismiss these road beatdowns. And there's just certain schools that favor nation status, like trade deals.
Yeah.
It is exactly what it is.
I don't pay any attention to the rankings, to be honest. Yeah. They're meaningless. I look more at how does this set you up for the NCAA tournament.
Yeah.
And Kansas is not – I was listening to Field of 68 this morning. That Kansas is a 4 seed this morning.
Okay.
It's been a minute. And Kansas can't win on the road. Kansas doesn't have a lot of depth. I mean, it's got 4 to 5 guys who can really play and then a big drop-off after that. This is not your usual – and then I guess they're not going to win the Big 12 for the first time in forever too.
Yeah.
So there's that. I mean, I think this is just a – the transfer portal is equalized in Kansas. I'm looking at 17 in Ken Palm today. It just nothing screams that this Kansas team is on par with the ones of the past.
No. Yeah. No, and they went through a period of winning the Big 12 14 years in a row. I think they've won it 14 of the last 15 or 16. It's very similar to it's a dominant run. Now you look at the SEC with Kentucky. When was the last time Kentucky won the SEC regular season title in basketball?
gosh, was it? No, it's been since 2016. I can
Yeah,
look
I was
this
going
up
to say
as we're doing
2017
it.
or 16. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's what I'm thinking.
Let's see. I'll get the answer if you can give me a minute.
Okay.
You're
Yeah,
welcome to
yeah.
stall
So,
while I do.
all right, but now look at in the SEC. Auburn or Alabama have won the last 3. And there's a chance Alabama, a remote chance that Auburn and Alabama could tie for the conference championship. And I ask this question a lot, but Kentucky is the absolute, in my opinion, most talented team in the SEC, probably the whole country. They're the wild card. Damn it, they've got it, that 6 inches between your ears. It's the most important thing out there. They are in everybody's head. And when they get to Nashville, there's almost this presumption that Big Blue Nation takes over, it's Catville, and they're going to win the tournament. It's not that way, though. They hadn't won the national championship since 2012 and the SEC in 7 or 8 years. Why this year? Why is Kentucky going to come from what they've done this year and win it all? I mean, can you make a case for it? I'm not saying you said they would.
Yeah, well, first of all, the last time Kentucky won the league was, and this is why we forgot it, 2020, because that's the year that the college basketball season ended as I was literally sitting inside the arena at the SEC tournament, having watched Vanderbilt and somebody play a late night game, and then within the next not even 24 hours, everything got called off. So so Kentucky did win it in 2020. We just forgot about it for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, how do you define talent? If you're defining it by recruiting rankings and NBA draft stuff, then probably. Does talent include being able to play defense?
Yes, it does.
I don't know what label you put on that. If it's the ability to play defense, they're certainly not the most talented team in the country. If it is the ability to take the raw parts and make those into guys who are capable of playing defense, maybe that's a different answer. But here we are, first week of March, and Kentucky has really not shown up and done that consistently throughout the year, although it's certainly been better lately. So I don't know. I mean, look, if Kentucky got it together, got to the Final Four, would I be surprised? No. I mean, Shepard, Dillingham, Onyenso, Big Z, Reeves, all the parts they've got, and they've got 9 or 10 that could play for anybody and start for anybody. But I'm also looking, last time out, give up 102 points to Arkansas. Before that, give up 89 to Mississippi State, which is not a great offensive team. Give up 95 to Alabama the game before. Now, that was a little different because Kentucky was winning that one by 30-something points late and maybe had some letdowns. But, they did show flashes. What was it? It was the stretch where they held Ole Miss to 63 and Auburn to 59, both pretty good offensive clubs.
Yeah.
And that happened within 1 week, but that's really been – and then that holding LSU to 75 in a loss, which isn't great, but it's not the last 3 games either. I guess point I'm getting at, you've seen it in flashes, but I think you need to see it for weeks at a time, and this team just hasn't shown us that.
Yeah. Like the comment by T, the problem. Kansas, like Kentucky, underachieving in the one-and-done era. That's right on. I mean, we talk about that a lot, but like that comment, we got a lot of smart viewers. I will say this. Yancy Porter is going to be on with us here in a second. Rebel Yell Hotline, Mondays at 6 o'clock on WHBQ Sports 56 and Super Talk, Mississippi. Chris, what I see in the SEC, you're right. I'm not going to pick Kentucky to go up there and win the SEC tournament. I'm not, for exactly what you just said. Does talent include playing defense? Yes, it does. I mean, and I think everybody is saying Kentucky's the most talented team. Most people are, because they look at those recruiting rankings. And so, Yancy, jump on in here with us when you can. But that alone is not going to win the thing for you. And Yancy, you're on with Chris Lee of the Southeastern 14. We're talking this SEC basketball, and Chris has a few more minutes with us. I know you have to go record at 1:30 usually. So, Yancy, jump in here with your thoughts on what your team, Ole Miss, needs to do I mean, and there's a lot of work they got to do because the non-conference schedule wasn't as strong. And is Chris Beard already out there scheduling every good team he can for next year?
Yeah, I mean, they got to win 4 in a row. They got to win the last 2 in the SEC regular season, and then they got to win 2 in the tournament. Unless the first team they play in the tournament's a highly net rank team, but that's probably going to be doubtful. I think the top 10 teams get a bye, and so they would most likely they would get a bye for the first round. So the second round, they could play someone with the 30s, maybe upper 20 ranking, possibly maybe someone like a Mississippi State by chance. But yeah, I mean, it's going to take 4 in a row. They just don't have the inside game. I've been talking about this, it seems like, for years. But when you don't have an inside game, it's just like in football where you can throw the ball all over the field and the opposing teams run for 400 yards against you every game.
Yeah.
Kind of like that old Big 12 two-hand touch lead that I always talked about. That's what it feels like this basketball team is.
Yeah. Yeah. Chris, I know before you go, comment on that and then let people know how they can follow you because I love watching what you're doing on Southeastern 14. It's great quality.
Yeah, Ole Miss is kind of a weird team because it's got Jamarian Sharp and Musa Cisse. They're both 7-footers. Chris Beard is a defensive-minded coach, and yet defensively, I'm looking here this morning. They are on defense in KenPom. They are 141 nationally, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me. They are an awful defensive rebounding team. They are a really good shot blocking team. In fact, they're one of the worst 10 defensive rebounding teams and one of the top 5 shot blocking teams in the country. I that's the one thing that's puzzled me all year is how to make sense of that. One thing Yancy said, I think he hit on something here. I'd go a step further. I think their bigs are not offensively minded. Maybe that hurts them on that end to where that's more pressure on Flanagan and Morrell and a really good backcourt. To get stuff done, that you can focus a little more attention on their guards and try to slow them down. They're a weird team. I just think Beard is a guy that has always got his teams to be really good on the defensive end. For some reason, it's not come together with the parts, and I'm not exactly sure why. Yancy would know better than I would, but they're kind of an interesting team when I look at who coaches them and those anchors underneath, because you would think there's some things in the way they play on the defensive end of the floor that would translate better than they have.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, Beard is a defensive coach. They've got 2 7-footers, 1 7'5" on top of that. One of them, Cisse, was the Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year. So that just lets me know how much better of a conference the SEC is than the Big 12. Yet we see the Big 12 ranked ahead of the SEC almost every single year. And the SEC is just so much more physical than the Big 12. They just get pushed around. That's why the bigs at Ole Miss, they're skinny, they're tall, but they're not wide. And they just get pushed around. I mean, it's just as simple as that. I'm telling you, if I'm trying to relate it in football terms, they are a Big 12-like team in football. They can throw the ball. A la the guards can shoot it from all over the field, and when they're hot, they're good. If you get 2 or 3 of those guards going now, Ole Miss is tough to beat. But shooting doesn't travel. It's inconsistent, just like in baseball hitting. But when you can play defense and pitch in baseball, that travels. And playing defense and rebounding travels in basketball. And Ole Miss, this team just can't do it. I think it was a misevaluations. But look, I think honestly, Chris only had a few weeks to get that team together.
Yeah.
And he had to take what he could get. I even look for, if Ole Miss doesn't do it, I think there's some talk that they're not going to even accept the NIT bid. I think Beard wants to get straight in that portal. He wants to get things right for next season.
Yeah, it'll be. Look, that's interesting. Not even accepting a bid, because that shows the chaos that we have. And I was thinking about this yesterday. A football coach in December, it used to be, okay, let's get ready for that bowl game. Now portal starts December 5th, NIL, Then you got early signing date, December 20th. It's a totally different world. Chris, look, we're going to bring in Rodney Orr, Tighter Insider, with us, and love having you on here. I think this discussion, Yancy's not a homer. He doesn't drink the Kool-Aid. He's just telling, like it is. You've got those big, tall. I think Ole Miss has 2 or 3 7-footers, but they got to score too. So that's the part of it. But and Chris, let people know how they can follow you, keep up with all your great work.
Yeah, go to Southeastern 14 on YouTube. That's where most of our stuff is. We'll be rolling some other stuff out probably this spring, but we're not quite there yet. We're tied up with following basketball. I'm trying to keep an eye on baseball, and then whatever happens in the ever-turning world of coaching changes in the portal and football. If you want team coverage, you'll get a better job from Yancy and the guys that cover Ole Miss. If you want a really good 30,000-foot view of what's going on with everybody, that's where we try to specialize, and I think that's certainly it's been resonating with some people. So I appreciate you having me on.
Hey, it absolutely is. You work hard, and I get a lot of people are getting on to you because they're seeing you on this show and other places. But thank you, and we'll do it again next Tuesday.
Yeah, thanks for having me. God bless you. We'll see you next week.
All right. Hey, let me tell you what. Rodney Orr, Tighter Insiders with us right now. Check out the great show Tuesday nights, 6:30. It's WVUA TV with Gary Harris, sports director at Channel 23, and Rodney Orr, Tighter Insider TV. Then also on the Vitamin Shop, Yancy.
Yeah.
Audrey and I did the show at the new Vitamin Shop location in the Regalia Shopping Center in Oxford out on Jackson Avenue. And you had said you had the crud last week. And when you felt better, I didn't hear back from you. So I said, well, we're not going to call Rodney Yancy because he has the crud. And scientifically, the crud just means he feels crappy. But we had the best time down in Oxford. Got down there Thursday night, went to the Vitamin Shop, checked in with Matt Price and Justin Ross, 3,800 square foot location out there, right next to Dick's Sporting Goods. The Vitamin Shop. Met Justin and Ada and the staff there. Great people. And we stayed at the True Hilton, Yancy, out off of Highway 7 right by University Boulevard. Had an awesome – went to some coffee shop right there by the Hilton. It was really good. Felt like I was in, Bohemia. It was really kind of a hip place. And then we went for lunch to City Grocery. But, Yancy, funny thing, I walked into Boo-Ray on the square – and I was like, there was nobody in there at like 11:30, 11:45, and it smelled funny. And I walked outside, and everybody was going, man, the fire department was out front. And I was like, they'd cleared the whole place. But we went to City Grocery, had an awesome lunch. Oxford, one of the coolest college towns in America. All these college towns are. So, and then also Rodney Orr, the May Veterinary Clinic, Tighter Insider Report. Love getting you two guys on here together. So, Yancy, let me get a question to Rodney right now. We're going to start bouncing it back and forth. Rodney, football practice, basketball, Alabama playing a big one tonight down at Florida. You got baseball underway, softball, gymnastics. What is there to cover in Tuscaloosa? What do you do?
Well, it's obviously a lot going on, and practice yesterday started for spring football. Kalen DeBoer had his first spring practice, had his first practice overall, obviously, and so I know everyone, all Alabama fans were excited about that. And, there's been a lot of buzz about basketball, as you mentioned, but that was a real difficult loss, tough loss Saturday night to the Vols, but you have to move forward. Florida played Alabama really well in Tuscaloosa here, a week or two ago, and so now you got to go down there. You got to kind of pick up the pieces and move forward. And the one thing I'll say about this Alabama basketball team, and frankly, I be honest with you guys, I haven't had enough time to really focus on them with all the stuff going on in terms of football, but they have, and I say rebounded. I'm talking about the way they have performed after a loss. They've really shown a lot of maturity in that way this year. So we'll see how they respond at Florida.
Well, it'll be an intense atmosphere, but it's just kind of crazy that if Alabama wins out and wins the SEC or ties for it, that'd be 4 straight years, for Auburn or Alabama, 3 for Bama, 1 for Auburn. The roles have changed so much, but football is still the king. And Yancy, talking about what's going on spring practice at Alabama, it's kicking off in Oxford. Like I said, you've got a lot of the expectation. I'm talking to 2 guys that cover the 2, along with Georgia. I think those will be the 3 highest ranked teams in the SEC going into next year. I'm sure LSU will get some votes, but what's the general
Don't forget Texas,
atmosphere?
Rob.
Oh yeah, I forgot.
I'd like to forget Texas, but don't forget them.
Hey, by the way, Dr. Waller May and I were talking yesterday when I was out hiking up on the river with Audrey, and he said, he's reading your book right now, Bigger Than Bama.
Oh,
And he just talked about how Rodney's parents moved him from Mobile to Texas. I said, yeah, Corpus Christi. And he said those Texas fans, just the way they were, strengthened his resolve to be bigger, and that's a pretty cool story. But
I got
jump
my
on in
book.
here,
I got
Yancey.
my book, Rodney.
Yeah, first,
Yeah, awesome.
I just got it in the mail.
Yeah, I'm
first,
glad.
Dave. I mean, that's awesome. I'm ready to read it myself too. I really am. I'm interested to read that book. But the first thing is that they're grouping Alabama, Ole Miss, Georgia, and Texas, and LSU at the top. Where the LSU love affairs coming from is one of the biggest head scratchers I've ever seen. We all know that LSU competed because of one reason, and that was that dynamic quarterback, and he's gone. They had the worst defense in the SEC. Lost both their star receivers, lost their quarterback. Yet they want to put LSU in that group. I don't know. I would like to get each individual voter or media person that is pumping up LSU in that group with Alabama, Texas, and Ole Miss. And I don't get it, Georgia. But back to the Ole Miss. Spring practice means absolutely zilch to Lane Kiffin. He would rather skip spring practice altogether and continue to fish in South Florida. So, what does spring practice mean? I mean, they don't even start to March the 19th. Last year, they still had 7 spring practices left. And Lane said, we're done. We're done with spring. So,
I love it.
Is that
so
really
that,
true? Is that really true?
yeah,
Yancey?
Yeah.
yeah. He said, we're done. They had
That's
7 more
crazy.
left. And he said,
Now,
we're done.
let me just break in right here. Yancey, I'm going to use that because could you imagine in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, if Lane
Oh, they
Kiffin
would have
became
a
the
heart
head coach
In
attack.
Gainesville,
and he
Florida.
canceled
Oh my
7 spring
God.
practices?
And you only get 20.
Oh,
I've
listen.
got people calling me right now. I mean, texting me.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the last week, 2 weeks, people I've known for 40 years. Why didn't we hire Kiffin?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Nah.
hey,
Yeah.
Lane's doing a fabulous job. I know he's made he's made a lot of ton of progress and in a lot of different ways and really good for that. But canceling 7 spring practices would not go over in Tuscaloosa.
No,
Yeah,
but
Well,
I mean, look, he knows what he's doing. He knows that spring practice is not really where you make your football team. But here's the deal: this is when you have at least a third of your roster coming in with new players, you want to gel them together.
Yeah.
So there is that aspect. But
sure.
look, you see Hugh Freeze, and he's doing it at Auburn. I think Hugh started theirs in February. He wants to keep all those players in their IPF for 3 or 4 months, the whole semester, spring semester. Lane does it all in like 3 weeks, and we're done. He doesn't want to
yeah.
keep them around. He's not trying to keep them going. February the 28th, and then take a week off, and then have a practice. He wants to go every day for 3 weeks and be done. His main objective is just not to get anybody hurt, and that's it. So spring practice. At Ole Miss, the big storylines will be will their freshman running back last year. What kind of development has he made going into this spring? As we know, Judkins left, and that was the biggest hit for Ole Miss's football team. And it was a hit. Look, I mean, we looked it up. Judkins did not fumble the ball one time. The ball never came out of his arms one time while he was at Ole Miss in 2 years. He
Wow.
only missed on third or fourth and short, less than 3 yards. He failed to get it one time. And you don't
Wow.
know how big that is when you have third and 3, fourth and 2, and you know how many times Lane goes for it. That is a very valuable tool to have when you got a running back that's going to get it every single time. So that is going to be a huge storyline there. Riscano, the freshman running back from Texas, how does he make that next step at Ole Miss? If he does it, they're going to have to go get another running back in the portal out of because we got another portal window coming, folks. And a lot of these players that aren't in first string, or maybe some freshmen that wanted to be in the rotation, this year, that are going to be sophomore next year, they're not in the rotation. They're going to leave. And so we're going to have
Yeah.
a lot of players leave again. So, this is the time for the players. It is important for them. No longer can these players just kind of laggy-daggy around in campuses around the country, because if you don't get your spot, you're likely going to another school. So
And you
a
ain't getting
lot's on the
paid.
line for a lot of players. But as far as Lane is concerned, he would rather not have spring practice. He'd rather be down in Boca fishing and keep everybody from getting hurt. Offensive linemen, we know that they got 5 new offensive linemen from Power 5 schools. That's going to be a big story as well. And then cornerbacks, a lot of turnover at cornerback. So running back, O-line, cornerback, that's the stories for Ole Miss in spring practice.
Rodney,
Wow, good stuff.
looking at that, and he's got a good litany of what they've got to do there. Alabama, you had 29 guys leave, but like you said, there was going to be some flushing out
Had to
of
be.
some bottom feeders anyway. And you pointed that out. So let's talk about, I love getting the two of y'all on here together because you know each other, you respect each other, but you really, really know you got high football and high sports IQs. But let's talk about Alabama's areas of concern, if they have any, but they got a lot of talent to fix those problems.
No, I think there's obviously a lot of, you always have concerns. And I think this is a big spring, for Kalen DeBoer to kind of, and they're familiarizing themselves with players. Players are familiarizing themselves with Kalen DeBoer, this coaching staff. They're all trying to get on the same page. My understanding, the practice yesterday, I spoke to someone who said, look, high energy. It was really well organized for a first practice. It went extremely well. So they got off to a good start yesterday, and they get a lot done. They run a ton of reps. They're probably, based on believe it or not, based on the feedback I got was it's a little bit more intense and a little bit more, high volume than what Nick Saban, how he ran it. Everybody does it a little differently. But so it went really well yesterday, I think. But the concerns that you want to know about the positions, and I think, look, Yancy alluded to the portal for Ole Miss, and they may have to go find a running back or whatever. But I look at Alabama and I say, okay, now some of the key spots. I think the interior of the offensive line. I saw where Pro Football Focus had 3 of Alabama's interior offensive linemen among the top 7 in the entire country. I don't know really what the significance of that, but I do think they are obviously really talented in the middle of the offensive line. They need offensive tackles. They've got some guys. Elijah Pritchett has a lot of ability. I think some of the young freshmen are, and I say freshmen, I should say redshirt freshmen, like Wilkin Formby from here in Tuscaloosa. Miles McVay is another one. Olas Alenin could play inside or outside. They got a transfer from Texas A&M, Niquel Bertrand, and he's a guy that is a redshirt freshman. So they have some potential here. I would say that if there's a position on the offense that you would really say, okay, they may hit the portal after spring, that would be one to keep an eye on. But really excited about the receivers. I think Jeremy Bernard, the transfer from Washington, is going to be a real key guy in this whole deal. And believe it or not, now look, Jalen Milroe had a fantastic year last year. There's still some Milroe's in this new system, what they're going to do, things that they're going to be required to do. I think there's still some challenges there for, a challenging competition for this quarterback job. I think Ty Simpson has worked extremely hard. I think Dylan Lonergan's very, very talented. Both those guys, Simpson and Lonergan, extremely talented. Austin Mack, the transfer. Now he's going to be a redshirt freshman. So we'll see. But down the road, Austin Mack is a name to really remember. And then defensively, they should be really good up front. I don't think there should be any reasons or excuses why they're not good up front. And I think they will be.
Yeah.
And the linebackers, the front seven, it's corners. I mean, they lost Kool-Aid McKinstry. They lost Terry and Arnold. Both those guys, I'm not going to say they're going to be first round, but they're potential first round picks. Trey Amos to Ole Miss. He's over there with Yancy now. Uh, you know what? He's extremely talented. Extremely. He would have been a starter here. He's got a lot of ability. So they're really having to, but they brought in, guess what? They got 5 guys on the roster right now, 5 that were 5-star players coming out of high school at that position. Uh, so 3 of them are true freshmen, though. So we'll see. There's not a lot of experience there. Damani Jackson's a transfer from USC. You got Jaleel Hurley, who's a redshirt freshman. Then you got Zabian Brown, Zay Mincy, Jalen Mbakwe. And then Malachi Moore is really the returning piece back there that's going to be the leader. But what about going to the transfer here right before the deadline and pulling out Keon Sabb from Michigan, who is a really talented kid at safety? I think that'll alleviate some of the loss, not all, but some of the loss of Caleb Downs.
Yeah. Yancy.
Wow, good stuff, Rodney.
It is. That is great
Golly,
stuff.
That's great. I just wanted to ask you before, Rob, how much media access do you guys get, Rodney, as far as, for spring practice? Do you get a day, a week? Do you get it 10 minutes?
Yeah. Well, obviously this is all new with Kalen DeBoer. I will say this: Coach Saban got a really bum rap, in my opinion. He gave us a good amount of viewing period every day. The only thing wasn't, it was his rule. He was the one voice, and I get it. So Coach Saban, he wasn't like everyone kind of made it out to be in terms of access until COVID, and then it all changed. But with all that said, the access now, look, we're going to get 3 days this spring where you can observe maybe 15, 20 to 30 minutes of practice, depending, which is not bad. And what we're told is if things go well, it could increase. So Coach DeBoer spoke yesterday. Guess what? We're going to get to speak to the defensive coaches this week. We're going to speak to players this week. So all of those things, the coaches being able to speak is probably the biggest difference right now, so that's going to be really interesting.
Yeah. Yancy, speaking of that, remember when you knew the coaches, you knew the players. I think we're going to go back to that because I think there's going to be so much heat from the fans about, okay, we don't even know how to follow our team anymore. We got to have a ticker tape at the bottom of the screen to keep up with the roster. Somebody's feelings got hurt last night. They're in the portal. But I like what Rodney just said, and I think we're going back toward that. I know I'm not a contrarian just to be a contrarian, but I do think we're going in that direction where there's going to be more access. They're going to have to give it.
The way they're doing it at Ole Miss, because Lane models just about everything in his program outside of practicing and sitting in the IPF 24/7 around the year after Saban, and he is the one voice for Ole Miss. He does give good access though. I'm kind of surprised that the Bama media did not have. Am I hearing that right? Y'all were not there for the first spring practice, Dudley?
No, we were not. We were not there for yesterday, but we get in on Wednesday. Now I will say this. Now let me interject this real quickly. According to the guys up in Washington that covered DeBoer up there, he had like really wide open access. I mean, he allowed people in. It was pretty wide open. So I don't think it'll get to that point here, but I think it'll be more.
Maybe he's just a little cautious and he wants to have the first practice.
Well, yeah, I would think so.
Just to kind of hone in on the players and the coaches and not have the circus with the first day. But yeah, I mean, the way that Ole Miss is getting around the player deal you were talking about, Rob, is now, you got NIL and you're supposed to be, representing companies and things of that nature. So now they're doing podcasts with the companies. So that's kind of the way that it's kind of circling around, the policy of Lane being the only voice in the program. So, yes, I do think that there's going to be more player access in the future because with the NIL deals, they're going to have to give them access.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think bottom line, what Kalen DeBoer is going to see is that there's no pressure at Alabama. I mean, it's going to be a lot more laid back, isn't it?
Right.
I mean, this is what's so funny. I remember when Bill Oliver took over for Terry Bowden midway through the season, and they were down there practicing the first day, and he said, look, we got 3 hours allotted for practice. If we get through in an hour and 15 minutes, we're done. There's no sense in hanging around. And that's a term you hear a lot in the pool, swimming with people. You just keep going and going and going. They call it garbage yardage. That's where you get injured. But I do think both of y'all have such a keen sense of what is happening. And I'm gonna bounce it around and talking about this and start with you, Yancy. The expectations at Ole Miss, you could feel it, man, like at City Grocery. By the way, I recommend for those of you that are Catholic like myself, Scotch-Irish Catholics, the blackened catfish sandwich from the Mississippi Delta on toasted bread with coleslaw, the cornbread, and those unbelievable French fried potatoes, and a big old piece of chocolate cake when you get through. But wow, it was good, man.
I think I just died listening to that.
You got to sleep.
I just had a heart attack.
I mean, Audrey was like, I want to move here. I mean, when you go to these college towns, and Rodney, I was talking to Dr. Waller May yesterday, these college towns, they're just pulling people back in, and they're unbelievable. You got everything you need in a big city, but you just got a lot of things that you don't have to deal with. And but also you can't really hide, Yancy. Lane Kiffin, like you say, when is he going to do his first ad for Bass Pro Shop?
Well, Bass is he likes sea, ocean salt water, not fresh water.
But they're big on saltwater fishing. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, he loves to fish, and it's going to be an interesting spring. All joking aside, with trying not to practice as much as possible. That they if you listen to Dudley, and it's a lot of same things as Ole Miss.
It's Rodney.
New cornerbacks, offensive line.
I've been called a dud before, Rod.
No, it's Rodney.
Rob.
I'm the same way. I've got so many names on here.
Yeah.
Excuse me, my bad. Thinking, but it's going to be very similar things as Alabama there. With the O line, with the cornerbacks, even running back. I mean, I think at Alabama they've always had one or two just absolutely monsters, usually two coming in, and I'm sure they got 5 stars after 5 stars that hadn't gotten their chance yet. But I would think that some eyes are going to be on the running backs there at Alabama as well. So a lot of the same things. Ole Miss is going to be very strong in that front seven like Alabama. Quarterback not as big as an issue. I mean, it start all the way. We know at Alabama, as just got through saying there's still some question marks. Can he handle the system, do everything that the new coach wants to do there? I don't know. We do know he has some passing efficiencies, especially in reading defenses, processing quickly. So that'll be something at Alabama that differs there than Ole Miss. But there's a lot of similar traits there at Alabama and Ole Miss going into this season.
Yeah. Rodney, talking about that, 3 of the top 7 offensive linemen, interior offensive linemen, Pro Football Focus are at Alabama. Again, that narrative, you had 29 guys leave, but you also brought in the number 2 ranked recruiting class, and only 2 of those guys left. Looking at Kalen DeBoer, you're going to get to go out there to practice. What are you going to be looking for? Are you going to immediately start comparing? And I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but say, oh, this is how Nick Saban did it. This is how he did it. Are you going to respect it and say, hey, this is just, it's different? Because know football. I mean, and one thing about you, Rodney, is you will tell the truth. Does this dress make me look fat? You betcha. You'll tell the truth.
Yeah, I've learned a lot of hard lessons from that, Rob. But No, really, I would say that look, everybody's different, and I think that's the one thing that Alabama fans struggle with through the years. I remember when Coach Bryant left, and
Yeah.
everything Ray Perkins did was judged by Coach Bryant. Well, it's people have to do it their way,
Yeah.
and I think that's the thing with Kalen DeBoer. So no, I'm not really going to be judging it by that. I think you look at things like people talked about yesterday, the ones I spoke with that happened to have the opportunity to be there, and I'm not talking about media people, but just the fact that they were really well organized for the first practice. They were upbeat. I want to look at the players. I like to say, and my people on Tighter Insider get a real kick out of this, on the hoof.
Yeah.
How do they look on the hoof
Love that.
physically? And you
I'm
know what,
taking it.
Rob? I'll tell you,
I love it.
man, listen, when I walked into that gate for that start of the 2011 season, my jaw dropped. And I walked out, and the first thing I did was I put on Tighter Insider. I think I just walked out of an NFL training camp. And you know how the fans responded,
Oh, yeah.
oh, come on. How many of those guys, you remember that Alabama LSU game that year? 44 of those players
Yeah.
ended up in the
Yeah.
NFL. But I'm seriously. So you look at them physically, and I like to look at the line of scrimmage. What do they look like physically? How do they
Yeah.
move around? I think you can tell a lot, even in 10 or 15 minutes, just physically. You can tell a lot. You can see the athleticism, where it is. Hey, but I'll also say this now. You remember Alabama won the national championship in 2009. They returned a lot of those guys. I remember when I walked in that gate for the start of fall practice in 2010, and I said, you know what? They've lost an edge. Some guys had gained weight. They lost a little bit of an edge that year, and you saw how it kind of ended up. That was a really talented team that kind of underachieved, actually. But anyway, with all that said, so I'm just getting to the point of your question is what do you look for? And those are some things that, you can pick up
Yeah.
on.
I want to say this. Brenden just texted me on our little internal chat. He's going to play a soundbite from Coach Steve Spurrier. And I'm excited to hear this because I've been looking at these basketball sidelines, and they have like 3 rows of upper deck seating just for the support personnel. There's more of them than there are players on the basketball team. And in football, Florida in the team photo has more support personnel than they do players. So let's hear what Steve Spurrier has to say.
You got to preface this is that Spurrier's been out and making comments about Napier initially, saying that he doesn't really know what's going on up there because he'd have about 10 or 11 less coaches than he has. And he doesn't understand because that's not how he did it. And that sort of got out there, and there was a bunch of stories about it. And then on my dad's show last night, he interviewed Spurrier, and then he sort of doubled down on what he thinks about all this college SEC specifically stuff. So this is that soundbite from last night on the Buddy Martin show.
Guy who's never backed down on what he said, that's as I've known him, is Steve Spurrier. But Coach, there was some comments over the weekend that were attributed to you, which you didn't back down from. But I think you said you'd like to clarify these. You like me to read some of these comments first?
Yeah, go ahead and read a couple of them.
All right. So said Billy Napier is a good guy who works his tail off. I like Billy, good family man, but we do wish the organization was a little bit more tidy. There's a feeling around the Gators of what the heck are we doing? There's a lot of questions that don't have the answers to.
Okay.
Did you say that?
I probably did. What I did say is what most of the fans are saying. I think that's the bottom line. But go ahead and I may say something like that. But, nowadays, almost all of these SEC football programs have 40 to 50 or more people working there. I think we got 62. I think we got more than anybody. So that would drive me crazy. I just mentally don't think you need that many, but all the schools seem to have just about that many. So maybe that's the new thing nowadays. And if you got 60 or so and you're winning big every year, then no one would say a word about that, I guess. But anyway, that's just me talking about too many people around. But most schools have it, so maybe that's just the way it is nowadays.
Well, I mean, I agree with that. And I'll start with, Yancy, Rodney, whoever wants to take that on first. There are analysts. There's people that are dealing with the portal, with NIL. There's so many things, but man, how much coaching is getting done? Somebody want to take a gander at that?
It's way too many. I mean, if you want to have guys that are dealing with the portal, I know Alabama there, and Rodney knows better than me with Saban. He kind of started building that tree out, right? But I'm with Steve. It's absurd. Maybe when they start the revenue sharing with the players, and you're having to support volleyball and softball and a bunch of non-revenue sports that you had the overflow of money before. Now you don't, because the players are getting that money, and it's what it should be, and not these collectives that are going right back to the alumni asking money from them. Maybe that will slow this down, but I mean, 62 people working in the IPF, that is absolutely absurd. And that's what he means by tidy it up.
Yeah.
You can't have an assistant to the assistant, and an analysis to the assistant of the assistant, and another analysis, analyst, an assistant to the assistant of the assistant. It's just we're spending money just to spend it.
Yeah, Rodney, doesn't it remind you of the federal government? Well, the
Yes.
Department of Redundancy. Let's do it again and again.
Yeah, I'm sure it does. Sounds like it. But I'll say this, Rob. Look, you're talking about Steve Spurrier here,
Yeah.
right? I mean, he didn't need it. As your old buddy Jimmy Hodge used to refer to him, he didn't call him Spurrier. He just called him the genius. Okay, so Spurrier didn't need anybody. All Spurrier needed was a defensive coordinator and maybe another coach or two, and he could have done it all by himself. And I'm not saying that. Look, I'm not being sarcastic. I mean, I'm not referring to his ego. That's not what I mean. I mean, literally, the guy was amazing. What he could do. I remember he used to tell Saban, "Why do you work so hard?" It just came. It just came easy to Spurrier. So no wonder he doesn't understand, because it just comes easy to him. And I'll say this about Lane Kiffin. Lane's a little bit like that. I mean, Lane can show up on, and I think he did a couple of times at Alabama, but he just show up on game day and decide to start calling the plays. I mean, he can do it right then and there.
Practice?
I mean,
Practice? Who needs
it's
practice?
pretty amazing. Yeah. Who needs practice?
Well, and again, it's not critical. Some of these analysts, I'm sure, serve a good role, but when you have way too many people on the payroll, it reminds you of a family business. I got a friend who specializes in taking businesses that are doing, say, well, but they want to go from where they are to superpower status. And he said the number one problem is, he was talking about dealing with businesses in Alabama, so I'll make it this. He said on Fridays after lunch, they couldn't get to the bank or the beach fast enough, okay? Everybody going in there and taking out 20, 30,000 for the weekend, whatever like that. You got too many people feeding from the trough. And when you got way too many people, I'm sure it can be confusing, but look, what Nick Saban did, it obviously worked. What Steve Spurrier did, it worked. But it is funny to hear him make comments about what's going on. And somebody put on here, Steve Spurrier, a.k.a. Mr. Critical, just picked, check, 2024 Gators to win 9 games.
That's Buddy Martin. He jumped on, and he said he just talked to Spurrier, got off the phone with him. He said he just picked 9 games.
Okay. So
I think that's a makeup pick, to be honest with you, because 9 games is not in the stars for Florida.
Yeah, for that. Yeah,
with that schedule and quarterback, no way.
Yeah, I don't see. I see. Maybe they could be below 6,
4 or 5.
Yeah.
I see 2.
70.
I see Dutch
It
people
should be
too,
coach of the year.
It's not good.
Let's bounce it around real quick before we go. About out of time. Rodney and Yancy and Brenden. And I'll start with you, Rodney. The SEC, the Big Ten getting together. Who's the smartest man in that room? We all know who it is. And what's Greg Sankey saying came out of those meetings?
You know what, Rob? I honestly, I haven't really kept up
Spring
with,
football.
This. I know,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
know your pain, brother.
but I will say this. I mean, it's I think it's what we saw. I don't know if you guys saw. One of the networks put out a potential the way college football could eventually be kind of divvied up,
Yeah.
and and it was it's pretty amazing. The one thing I did notice in that though, Rob and Brenden and Yancy, I was looking at that. I think it was like 48 teams they had. I think there'll be more than
Yes,
that,
I do too.
but yeah, but here's another thing. I did notice in their 48, one thing that kind of stood out to me. Mississippi State was not listed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure Yancey's giggling a little bit, but uh, but no, I think there will be more than that, and I think that's where we're headed. It's the SEC and the Big Ten. They're going to kind of align themselves together, and then we're going to see a future here in the next few years. It's already developing.
Yeah,
It's already
in
developing.
football, but I don't foresee that happening in any of the other sports.
Right,
Keith
right,
Carter, the
right.
AD for Ole Miss, alluded to that yesterday. This is going to be a football only thing. You can't have an NCAA tournament with 48 teams, right?
Yeah.
And there's so many other good in baseball. Think about all the good teams, that come from Conference USA and different conferences like that. It'll never work for any other sport, but football it definitely will.
Well, I had an interesting conversation with a very smart guy that knows college athletics really well off the air this week. And he said, Rob, don't be surprised if in a couple of years, half the sports that we currently have in college athletics are gone. I mean, I've got friends that
That's the
told
big
me
word.
back in the 70s when they were in school at Ole Miss, and they said, Rob, man, we had guys, we would have we quote a swim team. We'd have 300-pound offensive linemen out there, doing cannonballs at the diving competition just to say we had a team. I mean, it was Rodney Dangerfield doing that, triple Lindy, whatever. But look, Rodney, Brenden, Yancy, and Chris Lee earlier, awesome show. Thank you all so much. And I really appreciate both of y'all's contributions to what you do for covering your team.
And thanks
Rodney,
for my book.
Yeah. And thank you for
Yeah.
mine should be in
Showing
my
it right now.
post office
Showing the
box
book.
today. Yeah. Look at it.
Yeah.
And
Rodney,
like I
I'm gonna
said,
grab one of those too.
yeah,
Yeah.
I am.
I, text me.
I will.
Yeah,
Yancey.
I've got y'all on the group text, Rodney and Yancy from last night. So yeah, you've got it right there. But and I got to tell you, it is so much fun because Rodney, you cover Alabama, Yancy cover Ole Miss. Obviously, Brenden covers Florida in the SEC, and I cover the SEC. I'm an Auburn guy. I love getting everybody together because that's the difference in this conference. We want to beat each other, but it is family. I mean, that's what makes the SEC special. But the rivalries are as intense as ever.
Oh, yeah.
But there's a lot of respect, and I love getting y'all on here together, and I appreciate
I
you
love
doing
Rodney,
that.
but I hate Alabama.
Well, that's because, but if they weren't so damn good, you wouldn't feel.
I don't
that way, you know
care.
what I'm
I don't
saying?
want to talk about it, Rob. I just hate them.
Hey,
I don't want to talk about the Seminoles, and I can't even put Mississippi State into my brain other than that they were the catalyst for the promise, which I was there for. So therefore, I'm fine with that.
No, that was Ole
That's the
Miss
only
that was the
reason
catalyst for the
it's a
promise.
tool in our rise to glory and fame and awesomeness, and I was there to witness it. So I give you guys a pass. But Alabama, I just hate you because you ruined everything.
Here's the thing.
Everything. You ruined
This is
all the
what-
good trips. Everything.
Well, you know what we learned though, guys, back in 2020 during the draconian lockdowns of the pandemic was, man, we really needed each other, and I think the conference got it's been different ever since the fall of 2020. We're supposed to only have 15 or 20% capacity. And I think when Florida played at Texas A&M, they had 90,000 at the stadium. I still remember
That
Dan
was
Mullen just
crazy.
going crazy after that game. All right, let's close out. Rodney, let them know how they can follow you. And Yancy, you do the same. And we'll tag out by saying we most often see the face of Christ in the least among us. We live in the greatest country in the history of the world. Get out and do something great every day. And don't allow other people to decide how you think. Wake up every day, have your own thoughts. Free speech is what Sidelines, SEC Sports Network, and SECU are all about. Take it out of here, Rodney.
Okay. Yeah, it's TighterInsider.com. It's only $48 a year. You can get instant access with your credit card if you prefer. There is an address there to send a check, and that gives you all our premium information. We had DeBoer's comments, obviously the full comments that he had last night, and we've had some recruiting updates. We did our spring previews that are all there position-wise, and then, of course, our All Sports Forum. That's our community of Alabama fans, and it's nonstop right there on TighterInsider.com. Again, it's only $48 a year, and then also the book is Brenden held up. It's Bigger Than Bama, and you can find it on RodneyOrr.com. That's RodneyOrr.com, or you can find it on Amazon. And again, it's $19.95 plus shipping and handling.
Or you can hit the QR code on your screen or in the chat room right now.
There you go.
Right to
there
Rodney's
you go.
website.
Yeah.
Rodney's an OG when he's still charging $48 for his website. I think they was charging that back in the 90s. When I was on Insider, keeping up with them.
Hey, but, you know what, Rodney? You keep it up, baby, because we're the same way, man. I feel you. I got, I'm $100 a year, so let's bring it. I'm Black Label though, I got Buddy Martin and Fran's beard. Okay, I got Buddy Martin and Fran's beard. Okay,
no, you can follow me simple at Yancy Porter, but every Monday night the Rebel Yells broadcasted through the state of Mississippi up to Jackson, Tennessee, on Super Talk in Mississippi and WHBQ in Tennessee. And that's it.
I love it. I love listening to all these shows. I'm an AM radio junkie. Love following what y'all do. And again, we'll do this again next week. Okay. Hey, gonna rain a lot in the deep South today. Remember, we cover it all in the South, like kudzu and cotton. Get out, support all of our sponsors on the web, like Hewlett and Dunn. Great sponsors, Chad House, ECS House Industries. Want to thank everybody that makes this show possible. Brenden, incredible job as our producer, and all of our viewers. We appreciate you so much and tell your family and your friends and support our guests and what they do, because that's why we're here, is to serve. We'll take it out. See you tomorrow.
In a perfect world, you'd set a health goal and results would happen overnight. In this world, the real world, it takes time, dedication, and the right support to achieve your best self. The Vitamin Shop's health enthusiasts are here to make sure you're not wasting a single moment on the wrong supplements. From the highest quality sports nutrition and superfoods to the most sought after trends, you'll find a huge variety of science-backed solutions for every goal, and the people to help guide you along the path to greatness.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am Ari Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.